For our final segment, I'd like to invite His Excellency Bishop Loverde to come up and address us. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much again, Christopher. I want to echo the gratitude I spoke at the beginning to all of you, first of all, for being present, certainly to Dr. Wilcox for his excellent presentations. I think what's so affirming and encouraging for me, and I suspect for you, is that serious research, as the doctor has presented, confirms the teachings of the church. Because sometimes, so often I should say, we're told, you're not with it. You're in some dream world back there. Come on, grow up, get into the modern world. And the church teaching has truth. And these studies confirm that truth. So it's very, very encouraging. Thank you so much for your very solid and serious research, Doctor. It's good to have you here. Again, I want to thank Soren Johnson and his collaborators, and especially Christopher. Thank you, Christopher. Christopher is fairly new with us at the Family Life Office, and it's just a joy to have you with us. And I know you've worked very hard along with Soren and others, so thank you. You probably realize these things don't happen by wishful thinking. They only happen by diligent, hard work on details. So my heart goes out with great gratitude to them as well as to all of you. So as I mentioned, I do want to thank all of you who are gathered together here this morning to learn how to more effectively, persuasively, and charitably communicate the truth about marriage. That it is a union designed by the Creator to join one man and one woman together and to unite them to their children, the visible sign of their love. Again, I thank Dr. Brad Wilcox for joining us today and sharing his expertise with us. He is a distinguished voice, as I mentioned, in the field of sociology, and we're grateful for his time and his work. It's not easy to make the case in the sciences for things which are unpopular, but he has helped to demonstrate that marriage, in fact, still very much matters. Just yesterday marked 6 weeks since the United States Supreme Court's tragic decision in Obergefell versus Hodges. As you know, 5 members of the court redefined marriage in civil law and left the door wide open for the persecution of those who do not share this view because of deeply held religious beliefs or matters of conscience. As I said on the day following the decision to a group gathered during the Fortnight for Freedom, I did not think that I would ever have to defend the nature of marriage and the meaning of human sexuality, things which are inscribed in our very bodies. These truths can be known through the natural law and through human experience, and yet, with sweeping force, which some have likened to a tsunami, popular opinion on both shifted and a new narrative was written. We now stand in a culture which so desperately needs help climbing out of the wreckage. And that is why something like today's event matters. Catholics have a distinctive role in communicating the truth about marriage. We must be able to do so with our words and our witness. We have both faith and reason to help us. As Pope St. John Paul II wrote, and I quote, "Faith and reason are like two wings on which the human spirit rises to the contemplation of truth. And God has placed in the human heart a desire to know the truth, in a word, to know himself, so that by knowing and loving God, men and women may also come to the fullness of truth about themselves. End of quote. And that was from St. John Paul II's encyclical, Faith and Reason. But the third thing we need, in addition to faith and reason, is joy. As Pope Francis has said, and again I quote him, we cannot forget that evangelization is first and foremost about preaching the gospel to those who do not know Jesus Christ or who have always rejected him. Many of them are quietly seeking God, led by a yearning to see his face, even in countries of ancient Christian tradition. All of them have a right to receive the gospel. Christians have the duty to proclaim the gospel without excluding anyone. Instead of seeming to impose new obligations, they should appear as people who wish to share their joy, who point to a horizon of beauty, and who invite others to a delicious banquet. It is not by proselytizing that the church grows, but by attraction. End of quote. And that quote, as you know, is from Pope Francis's apostolic exhortation, Evangelium Gaudii. So, faith, reason, and joy. These are the tools with which we communicate the truth about marriage. It is through our faith that we know God's purpose for human sexuality, marriage, and motherhood and fatherhood. God's self-revelation given to us in the scriptures is unambiguous. For example, in the Gospel of St. Matthew, we hear, some Pharisees approached him and tested him, saying, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any cause whatever? He said in reply, have you not read that from the beginning, the Creator made them male and female, and said, for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, no human being must separate. Man and woman, marriage, a one flesh union. This has been God's design from the beginnings, from our origins, from our Genesis. God's plan for the order of creation remains just as he is, the same, yesterday, today, and forever. Particular teachings of our faith are more or less popular in culture during various times. This does not make them any less true. But besides faith, we have reason. Reason is another tool we have to communicate the truth about marriage. As Catholics, we believe that science and reason support what God has revealed to us in the Scriptures, since there can be no contradiction found in God, who is the author of creation. And so Dr. Wilcox's presentation today and the statistics that he has offered are so important. Though many people are trying to marginalize those who hold that marriage is between a man and a woman by calling us small-minded, unenlightened, ignorant, or bigoted, what is clear from today's presentation is that men, women, and children all do best when we act in accord for God's design for marriage. The sociological threats to a thriving marriage culture are many, as we heard. Unwed motherhood and fatherhood, cohabitation, divorce, same-sex unions, and third-party reproductions, to name a few. As our culture proceeds down this treacherous path, and sociological data helps us to demonstrate the problems as well as the solution, we cannot stand by, though we may be tempted to do, and say, "I told you so." No, like the Good Samaritan, we must assist and accompany those who have been casualties of the culture. Perhaps some will be convinced to change course through faith. Perhaps some will be convinced through data. But many will be convinced by still yet another way. And that brings me to the third tool we have to communicate the truth about marriage to our culture: joy. There has been nothing more effective throughout history in evangelizing people than Christian joy. What is different about Christians? Many throughout history have said that it is our joy in the face of great difficulty, our joy in knowing the love of the Lord Jesus Christ. Our culture desperately needs to see the joyful witness of married couples whose fidelity and perseverance challenge the mentality of our throwaway culture, which treats people as disposable. Young people, especially those who are afraid of commitment, are delaying or avoiding marriage. They need to see the joy of those who are married. And when I speak about joy in marriage, you could say, well, you could say that, Bishop, you're not married, so. So, where's your witness, buddy? But, I may not be married, but as a priest for almost 50 years now, I have dealt with many married couples. And if I just go aside for a moment from my prepared text, I want to tell you about a story that has an event that happened that's long stuck in my memory and that I often use, actually. Some of you may have heard it in other settings. When I was much younger and I was a priest in Connecticut, for a while I had a group of couples gather every month. And we did so about a couple of years until then my duties took me elsewhere. And we would gather, and over the course of a year we would study either a book or a part of scripture. And we'd go to once a month, we'd go to a different couple's home, do the study, interact, and then have coffee and cake, something like that. Well, it was in the month of June, so several of these couples were celebrating their 25th. So as we're sitting around having coffee and a cake, one of the women kind of winked at me, and then she said to her husband, she said, "You know," she said, "during these 25 years, there have been times when you have irked the heck out of me. But you know, honey, I still love you." And I thought, wow, doesn't that say it all? Because those of you who are the most happily married know from experience, it isn't just a walk through the roses. There are challenges, there are difficulties. We're all inwardly selfish at times. So to give of ourselves for someone else, to put someone else first, not always easy. And you know that. And yet, when there's authentic love rooted in Christ, when there's this commitment to being faithful in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health, until death. That's what makes the joy of marriage, I'm convinced, even though I'm not married. And I'd say parenthetically, it's that same fidelity that keeps us priests joyful. Because we too are married to Christ and his church. And we too must remain faithful in good times, in bad, in sickness, in health, in all the challenges, and yes, the joys, until death. So, yes, we need the joyful witness of couples, not rah-rah joy, but an inner contentment and peace. To go back to my text. To young peoples at World Youth Day in Rio de Janeiro, Pope Francis said, and I quote him, "Today there are those who say that marriage is out of fashion. Is it out of fashion? In a culture of relativism and of the ephemeral, many preach the importance of enjoying the moment. They say it's not worth making a lifelong commitment, making a definitive decision forever, because we do not know what tomorrow will bring. I ask you instead," the Pope said, "to be revolutionaries. I ask you to swim against the tide. Yes, I am asking you to rebel against this culture that sees everything as temporary and that ultimately believes you are incapable of responsibility, that believes you are incapable of true love. I have confidence in you, and I pray for you. Have the courage to swim against the tide, and also have the courage to be happy." End of quote. Faith, reason, and joy. My brothers and sisters, if we hold on to these three tools, these three gifts that the Lord has given to us, and if we use them to share the good news about marriage with hearts on fire, then we can hold on to hope for the renewal of our culture and the restoring of respect and wonder for what God has made. Finally, faith, reason, joy, these three are framed by yet an indispensable reality: prayer. Prayer, as you know, is the lifting up of our minds and hearts to God in response to the Holy Spirit's promptings deep within our inner life. Prayer is our encounter with the triune God, God the Father, who loves us, has his sons and daughters beyond our wildest imagining, with God the Son, who so willingly suffered, died, and rose again, so that we are redeemed and saved if we open ourselves to his transforming grace. And with God the Holy Spirit, whom the Father and Son send us to inspire, to guide, and to strengthen. In prayer, we focus our attention on the Lord God. And Dr. Wilcox reminded us, I'm really quoting him, but couples who focus on something larger than themselves, especially God, are paradoxically more likely to enjoy marital happiness and stability. Relationships don't have to meet unrealistic expectations. More likely to see marriage as an opportunity to serve rather than to satisfy one's own desires and needs. Prayer daily at home, prayer liturgically every weekend, at least on Saturday. Oh, yes, how we need to say that. I'm not unreal, you know. Every weekend on Saturday night or Sunday, prayer is so efficacious and powerful. Again, research tells us, as we saw this morning, men and women who attend church together are more likely to succeed in their marriages, more than 35% less likely to divorce, and God is the center of marriage is the best religious predicator of marital reality. Prayer enables us to experience authentic inner joy, the joy of the gospel, the joy that is in the end a person, the Lord Jesus Christ, who leads us to the Father through the power of the Holy Spirit. Again, as we saw, happiness in marriage is most likely to be found by seeing marriage as an opportunity to make a gift of oneself to one's spouse, to one's children, and to God. And so I conclude. Yes, marriage is at the crossroads. We are commissioned with both the privilege and the responsibility to live as joyful witnesses to the truth and the absolute conviction: marriage still matters. Thank you.